Hey, this is Toby LaVigne with more guidance for God's game of life. Learn the good news, find your position, win your freedom.
All right, in this episode, I want to talk about the hero's journey. And in this case, you're the hero. A bunch of years ago, I had the opportunity to take a course put on by this gentleman, Don Miller. Maybe you've heard of him from StoryBrand. Don Miller, I think, has a story writing background, was involved in movies, and he's one of these people that has studied, story, right? That there's a structure to it. And it was a profound shift for me because as someone who has worked for a long time around presentation, communicating, a bit of writing, not at his kind of level, this was a dynamic that kind of eluded me. I hadn't connected them. And in fact, there was another part of it that got me even more excited, is that I'm also someone who's been very much a student of my personal development in general, and this whole story arc of my life. But again, I hadn't quite thought of it in those terms. So I want to talk about your hero's journey. But before I do, let's give a little bit of context. I'll just take you through his framework. It's a 7-part framework that really helps to describe any book, any movie, any story you've ever seen. And one of my goals from this episode is to show you that those are the elements that you probably want in your life. In fact, I don't even think it's probably. It's definite, okay? And Don Miller talks about this from the standpoint of helping companies to communicate their offer better to their customers so that customers will want to engage. And one of the really interesting things that he points out is most companies, most marketers, set out to tell the story of a company or themselves from, look at how great I am. Look, we've been in business this many years and we have these capabilities and this number of employees and all this. And it's so pervasive that most of us are like, yeah, that's usually what I see in a presentation or on a website. But it wasn't until I've never liked it, but I didn't know why. And when he pointed out what's wrong with that is that we are merely guides to helping other people succeed on their journeys. Even if that journey is going out to dinner and you're a restaurant, right? Or buying a new car, or building a home, right? Planning a wedding. So the idea is our customers or our prospective customers encounter us and there's something they want. And if they could solve it themselves, they wouldn't be looking for us, right? So what is it's in the way, right? So just like the movie, there's the hero. The hero wants to accomplish something. They want to defeat the evil. They want to get the girl or the guy or whatever the deal is, but there are some things that are in the way. And what's in the way? Well, there are oftentimes real physical obstacles. There are also internal sort of emotional, psychological obstacles, self-doubt, critic in my head. And then there can also be sort of this pervasive sort of philosophical kind of an obstacle, like, gosh, does it really have to be like this? Should the bad guys be allowed to win? That sort of a thing. And what typically happens in a movie or a book is that they meet a guide, right? He always talks about Star Wars with Yoda, I guess is the character's name. But in every movie, there's some sort of support character, whether it's really obvious guide or it just happens to be their best friend, but they're acting as a guide or whatever. There's a guide. And what's interesting about the guide is the guide has already been there and done that. And now they're on what you might call an artist's journey, where they're now on a journey of taking what they've learned to help other people. And so I've gone through 3 points there. If you hadn't followed it, there's something they want. There's the obstacles, which is 2. They meet the guide, which is step 3. Step 4 is they have a plan. Here's the coaching, right? Step 5 is they call them to action. do it, right? And then that story results either in success or failure, which is 6 and 7, right? And the extent to which we identify with that character and their plight and what they're up against, and the tension of will they or won't they succeed and how much is at stake, has a lot to do with whether or not we're on the edge of our seats, really enjoying the movie, really pulling for the character. You've probably, if you think about it with respect to this structure, you've probably seen some movies or read some books where they really got you, and then others where it's like, it's probably because they didn't quite get you engaged with that person's journey, okay? So that's the story structure. So now let's go back to our lives. What do we want? You're the hero. Well, I would submit that all humans want to succeed, which is why there are so many success books, so many success articles, so many success podcasts, right? But what is success really? It's really a feeling, right? Because it's not the specific things you acquire or surround yourself with, or the accolades that you earn, or whatever else. It's how you feel when you put your head on the pillow at night. It's how you feel walking around. It's how you feel on Monday morning when it's time to get out of bed, right? When a person is successful, they feel a set of emotions. They feel satisfied with the work that they do. They feel a sense of meaning. They feel a sense of connection to other people. They feel a sense of hope for the future, right? Together, those to me make up love. So I'm just gonna say what the hero wants really is love. I mean, it doesn't sound like a good macho thing to want, but I think at the end of the day, really, 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 what we all want is love, okay? Because when you have enough love, you're not worried about anything else, okay? All right, but what's in the way? Oh gosh, what's in the way? What's not in the way, right? Earlier I did an episode about the fog of war. What's in the way is pretty much everything else on earth. All these competing interests, all these temptations, all these apparent obstacles, real and imagined, right? The critics in our head, the story reel that runs from what we heard from the teacher in whatever grade, or the parent, or the coach, or some of the people at home, right? Whew, it's a lot to think about. There's a lot in the way, but it is surmountable. That's what makes life rich, right? So you can see I'm following this story structure. So down here we have all of the obstacles, some of which are, real evil. Some of it are just sort of inconveniences and temptations, but it all really boils down to evil, and it really exists. All right. We got to meet a guide. We talk a lot about, you should find a good mentor. You got to surround yourself. You're the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. You've probably heard some sayings like that. Whether you actually meet a literal Yoda in your life or not, I don't know. But I would bet that right now you have at least one, if not more, people with wisdom and the ability or the will, the desire to see you succeed and do well. And if you don't, you need to seriously take a look at who you're hanging around with, okay? But if we really get clear with what we want, we can start to get more clear with what kind of guides we surround ourselves with, right? Because what I found on my journey, when I wasn't as clear about what success was, is I sought out and surrounded myself with guides that were really trying to show me, in a sense, how to succeed by being selfish, which, by the way, is impossible. But the internet's full of it. Studies show that if you put an orange-colored button at this corner of your website, more people are going to feel compelled to punch it. And then if you build your checkout system this way, they'll pull out their credit card and they'll give you their money and you'll get it all out of their wallet. I'm being a little bit silly about it, but it's out there, okay? Lots of different versions. So Here you are, the hero of your own story, from birth, ever seeking love, constantly facing new obstacles. That's life. They never go away, right? You meet the guide, and I'm going to suggest that the most important guide that you could add to your life, that you could take on, is God, okay? Faith. That's a heck of a guide, all right? Definitely got to have him on your team. That guide and the Bible lay out a clear set of rules of right and wrong, okay? And if you keep coming back to this to this podcast, I'm going to show you the physics that happen inside of that game that I call four cross, right? It's like, I like to say it like this. We could go, let's say skateboarding. You ever see skateboarding in the half pipe, right? You got to deal with real physics there. There's balance, and there's the acceleration and the angles and the flip turns and all of this stuff, right? And so you want to do that and not fall on your face. You have got to develop the ability to deal with the physics, right? You could try prayer, right? You could have never ridden a skateboard before, and you could read the Bible and say, God, I'm about to try this half pipe. Please make this go well. Miracles do happen. More likely, though, than not, is you're going to go sliding down the half pipe, right? So in addition to having faith, which is an incredible tool, we also need to actually understand how the physics of this world that, by the way, God created, right? He created gravity, the whole deal. So you want to understand those physics. So actually what you do in this whole story brand thing is then this is where there's basically the plan. So it's 1, 2, 3, this is 4. 4 is the plan. So read the Bible, pray, do it in community, right? So that's sort of this top God layer. And then it's sort of the second layer, we have four cross. So learn the rules of the game. Learn how it works, right? As I've said many times, there is an actual 4-part cycle and sequence to how humans interact so that you can succeed on your life's hero journey, right? Okay? Learn the rules. Find your position, right? Practice. Again, community comes in and again. Who are you hanging out with? Who are you doing this with? That's a pretty strong plan for how you can go win at your life's journey. But you can read all this, but none of it matters until you act, right? This is where we have to take personal responsibility. We've got to take action, right? We can't be victims. You can go or you cannot go. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. The drinking is up to you. But if you do or don't, that's where we get to 6 and 7. There's success and there's failure. And what we can see is that most people get lost down here in the obstacles, right? They don't really take guidance. They're not that coachable. They don't have faith. They don't do these activities. They don't act. They just do what they're told and they expect something good to happen. And that's just not how it works. God calls us to love Him, to love God, and to serve each other. This is what I really should call is, say up here, is serve. Number 5, serve. Find your service and give it. If you do, you're going to get those feelings that I call love. If you don't, you are going to suffer. Suffer is a consequence of not accepting the way things are. This right here, I'm pointing to this whole sequence, this story arc. This is the way things are. God created this planet, humans, everything on it, and gave us specific do's and don'ts in the Bible. It's full of stories that show us what happens when human beings listen and what happens when we don't listen. We're adding this extra element of 4-cross to show the next level of dynamics, because a big part of why human beings don't obey God in the Bible is because we step onto this field, hopefully with some faith, and then we get blindsided because we didn't even know how to play the game. On this show, we're going to show you consistently how to play the game, how to figure out this 4-part cycle and sequence that we call 4-cross, so that you can win your hero's journey. That's the whole game. Love. Hey Christians, Toby here with one more thing before you take off. You know, studying the Bible, praying, going to church, those activities help us to remember the good news throughout our daily lives. But did you know there's even more good news? There is. God designed this great game of life for everyone to win. It's supposed to work. The reason it doesn't work a lot of times is because we violate the physics that He installed into this whole system. So one of the things that we know of as believers is that God created each one of us unique, created us to come here and serve one another from some specific purpose. Which begs the big question, doesn't it? What's my purpose? How do I find that purpose? Well, I spent decades trying to answer that question for myself. And in my search, I discovered this 4-step cycle and sequence of prosperity. And as it turns out, there are 4 positions in this game that are vital for society to work. And the even more good news is that you were born hardwired to excel at one of these 4 positions. All right? Now, when I discovered my position, it led to a series of huge breakthroughs in every aspect of my life. And I'm excited for you to have that same epiphany. All right? So, to help you do that, I created a series of free videos that you can find here at 4cross.us. So, look, don't let any more of that precious life slip by. Go to 4cross.us, watch the videos, learn your position, find it, and win your freedom.